Evelyn
The jet is
Hawthorne,
dead.
the billionaire
Why?
CEO of
Ma'am, the
Hawthorne
power is
Global
completely
Aviation,
drained.
had
Find
10
the
elite
source,
technicians
now.
standing beside her dead jet. But when I started it with a $2 key, she didn't thank me.
Mason Reed,
She called me
you
a
are
security threat.
Your access
A
is
guard
revoked.
dumped
Get
Sophie's
out now.
medicine bag onto
This
the
is a
hangar
mistake.
floor,
I don't
and my
want
little
to
girl
tell
tried to
you.
hide her hospital bracelet under her sleeve.
Just leave me alone.
Then Victor Crane,
Men
Evelyn's
like
chief
him
technician,
bring sick kids when
laughed
they
in
need
front of everyone
sympathy.
and said, "Men like him bring sick kids when they
You
need
think you
sympathy."
can get away with this?
I
Mason,
didn't hit
calm
him.
down. It wasn't personal.
I picked up
Not
Sophie's
personal?
crushed paper airplane, put it back in her hands, and walked out. By morning, the internet called me a scammer,
You go, Sophie.
but nobody knew that same $2 key was hiding the dead billionaire's final warning. My name is Mason Reed, and I fixed a billionaire's private jet while my daughter's medicine was being searched like evidence. Before we get there, take a quick second to join the community by hitting subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. My tools were already across the hangar floor when I realized the jet was still running. A socket rolled under a polished shoe. My old voltage meter lay face down beside a champagne table they had dragged in for investors, and one security guard was going through my bag like he expected to find a bomb between the screwdrivers. Hawthorne Global Hangar 7 was all glass, white lights, and money, with Evelyn Hawthorne's silver private jet sitting in the middle of it like a dead whale that had come back to life. 10 elite technicians stood around it in clean jackets, men with badges and tablets and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to explain a rent payment. They had failed to start that aircraft for 2 days. I had only come there to move ground equipment after Sophie's appointment ran late and the babysitter stopped answering her phone. My daughter was sitting on a folding chair near the service cart, small inside her hoodie, holding her medicine bag in both arms. Evelyn Hawthorne, billionaire CEO, looked from me to Sophie and said, "Men like him bring sick children when they need sympathy and a witness." The words landed before I could step between them. Sophie pulled her hospital bracelet under her sleeve, but the guard had already seen the bag. He took it from her lap and dumped it open on the hangar floor. Inhalers, pill bottles, insurance papers folded twice. 3 paper airplanes she had made in the waiting room, each one with a different cloud drawn on the wings. One slid near Victor Crane's shoe. He didn't pick it up. He just smiled at me the same way he used to smile years ago, before my name got dragged out of avionics and buried. I had noticed the problem by accident, if you want the truth. The jet wasn't dead. It was locked out. The tiny $2 emergency maintenance key was missing from the avionics reset panel, the kind of cheap plastic key every real mechanic knows not to lose, because the most expensive machines in the world still depend on small, ugly things. When I said I could start it, Victor laughed loud enough for the investors to hear. "Mason Reed used to call himself an avionics specialist," he said, "before grief made him dangerous." Evelyn gave me 2 minutes, no more. Start the jet, or she would report me for tampering with a private aircraft. I took the old spare key from my kit with my hands steady because Sophie was watching. I opened the panel, reset the emergency lockout, and the cockpit screens woke one by one, soft blue light spreading across the glass. The auxiliary systems hummed. The jet came alive. Nobody clapped. Nobody apologized. Evelyn looked at the technicians, then at me like I had stolen something from her by being right. "Search him," she said. Sophie looked up from her scattered medicine and whispered, "Dad, did I make them hate you?" I bent down, picked up her paper airplanes, and did not answer, because my mouth would have broken if I tried. The cockpit screens came alive one by one, and for a second nobody in that hangar moved. Blue light washed across the windshield. The auxiliary power unit caught with a low, steady whine, and the dead jet that 10 elite technicians had been circling for 2 days suddenly sounded like it had only been waiting for somebody ordinary enough to check the simple thing. I stood there with the $2 emergency key still between my fingers, my old tool bag open at my feet, and Sophie's pill bottles scattered near the service cart. The silence should have felt good. It didn't. Evelyn Hawthorne looked at the screens, then at her technicians, then at me, and I saw what the start had done to her. It had not solved her problem. It had embarrassed her. A ground mechanic with worn sleeves had just done what 10 men with polished badges could not, and all those investors by the glass wall had seen it happen. Victor Crane moved first because men like him know panic needs a story fast. "No," he said, sharp and loud. "That was planted." He pointed at the open panel like I had pulled a trick out of it instead of a lockout. "He knew exactly where to go because he caused the fault. This was access fraud." I looked at Evelyn, waiting for one honest second from her. She gave me none. Her face closed around Victor's words like they had saved her from thanking me. "This is no longer a maintenance issue," she said. "This may be a security breach involving a private aircraft." That changed the room. Technicians backed away. Phones came up. The investors who had been pretending not to watch stopped pretending. Airport security came at me from both sides, and when I said, "My daughter's medicine is on the floor," one of them told me to keep my hands visible. They searched everything: my jacket pockets, my tool bag, the van outside with the cracked rear door and the booster seat still in it from when Sophie was smaller. They opened the glove box, shook out old receipts, lifted the floor mats, and laid my tools in a row on the hangar concrete like evidence. Then they went through Sophie's medicine bag again while people recorded. An inhaler rolled under a cable. Her appointment card landed near a technician's shoe. One guard stepped backward without looking and crushed one of her paper airplanes under his heel, the one she had drawn that morning in the hospital waiting room. Evelyn's silver jet flying over a big square building with red crosses in the windows. Sophie made a little sound and reached for it, but Victor bent down first, picked it up by one wing, and smiled. "Careful," he said. "Her dad may invoice us for emotional damage, too." I felt my body move before I chose it. My hand closed, my shoulder turned, and for half a breath I saw exactly how easy it would be to put Victor on that concrete beside my tools. Then I saw Sophie watching me with both hands pressed against her chest, trying to make herself small enough not to cause more trouble. So I took the airplane from Victor, smoothed the crushed nose with my thumb, and folded the wing back into place as best I could. I put it into Sophie's shaking hands and said, "Hold on to this for me, baby." Evelyn's heels clicked behind me. "Mason Reed is banned from every Hawthorne property effective immediately," she said. "File the incident as a potential aviation security violation." A security violation, not a misunderstanding, not a mistake, a phrase heavy enough to end a man's airport life. I picked up my tools while the jet I had started kept humming behind me, and Sophie whispered, "Are they going to take your job too?" I didn't answer because the truth had already started doing that. By morning, I was not the man who started Evelyn Hawthorne's jet. I was the airport scammer with the sick kid. That was the version they gave people, and the internet swallowed it whole because the lie came with a clean caption and a cruel little clip. The video showed security searching my bag. It showed Sophie standing beside the service cart while her medicine lay scattered on the hangar floor. It showed me reaching for her crushed paper airplane with my jaw tight and my hands dirty. What it did not show was the cockpit screens coming alive. It did not show the $2 key. It did not show 10 elite technicians failing for 2 days before a ground mechanic noticed what they missed. The caption read, "Ground mechanic uses sick daughter to scam billionaire CEO." By 9, strangers had my name. By 10, they had Sophie's face. By noon, airport security suspended my badge because Hawthorne's report had flagged me as a possible threat to private aircraft access. That little plastic badge was not much to look at, but it was how I kept our lights on. Without it, I could not get through employee gates, could not take hangar calls, could not touch half the jobs that paid cash fast enough to matter. 2 small maintenance clients canceled before lunch. One man I had fixed fuel carts for since Sophie was 5 said he was sorry, but he could not have his company tied to an aviation security investigation. He said investigation, like it was already a verdict. Then the hospital called. Sophie was on the couch with a blanket over her knees, folding a new paper airplane from the corner of an old bill. I stepped into the kitchen, but she still heard enough. The treatment slot needed payment confirmations sooner than expected. Another child was waiting. Another family was ready. The woman on the phone said it gently, like gentle words could make a door close slower. When I hung up, Sophie looked at me over the paper crease and asked, "Do people think you're a bad dad because you brought me?" I told her no. I told her people online did not matter, and she nodded like she wanted to believe me badly enough to help me out. Then I went into the laundry room, shut the door, and ran the dryer empty so she would not hear what happened to me in there. That afternoon, Victor Crane called from a blocked number. He said the scandal could disappear if I signed one statement saying Hawthorne technicians had already fixed the jet, and I had only been nearby when it powered on. I looked at Sophie's medicine bottles lined up on the counter, thought about the slot, and still said no. The lie could save her treatment. It would also teach her that the truth was only for people who could afford it. The next morning I went to Hawthorne's private terminal with my badge already suspended and my name already dirty. The building had glass doors so clean they looked like they weren't there, and a receptionist who looked at me like I had brought the internet scandal in on my shoes. I asked for the full hangar footage, not the clip, not the edited version, the whole thing, from the minute I walked in to the minute that jet powered on. She told me Miss Hawthorne was unavailable. I said I would wait. So they sat me in a white lobby under a giant portrait of Arthur Hawthorne, Evelyn's dead father, standing beside that same silver jet with one hand on the fuselage and the other near the avionics panel. He looked like the kind of man who had built things with his name on them and still remembered what tools felt like. Victor Crane came out instead of Evelyn. Gold Hawthorne badge on his chest, perfect jacket, same clean smile I remembered from Atlas Aerosystems. "Mason Reed," he said, like he was pleased to find me still alive enough to ruin. "You always did have trouble knowing when to stop." Hearing his voice pulled me back 6 years to a maintenance bay that smelled like hot wiring and burnt insulation, back when I still had my avionics certification and Sophie's mother was still sleeping beside me at night. I had found a wiring defect in a fleet of executive jets, not a minor one, a real failure point, the kind that could cut power where no pilot wanted to lose power. I wrote the report clean, photos, voltage readings, service history, everything. Victor took it upstairs, rewrote the conclusion, and made the defect look like routine wear. When I refused to sign off, he waited until my wife died, and used the mess I was in as proof against me. Missed calls became instability. Grief became impairment. One morning, crying in a break room became emotional unreliability around flight-critical systems. I was raising Sophie alone by then, learning how to pack lunches with one hand and fight medical bills with the other. I didn't have money for lawyers. I didn't have sleep. By the time I understood what Victor had done, my certification was under review. My savings were gone. And every private aviation shop within driving distance had heard I was dangerous. Victor stepped closer now, lowering his voice so the receptionist could pretend she heard nothing. "Men like you don't lose because we lie," he said. "You lose because nobody important believes you." I wanted to answer him, but the portrait behind his shoulder caught my eye. Arthur Hawthorne was standing beside the jet with the avionics panel open, and inside that panel, plain as a nail in daylight, the tiny emergency maintenance key was still clipped in place. The same $2 key everyone claimed had simply gone missing. My mouth went dry. Arthur had been alive when that photo was taken. The key was there when the jet was his, which meant somebody removed it after he died, which meant that jet had not failed by accident. It had been made to fail. Nora Blake followed me out through a side exit where the private terminal stopped looking expensive and started looking like every airport does behind the doors: concrete walls, humming vents, carts with bad wheels. She didn't call my name until we were past the cameras. "Mr. Reed," she said, low and quick. I turned, still carrying the picture of Arthur's missing key in my head. Nora was Evelyn's operations director, the kind of woman who knew every schedule, every badge swipe, every door that opened when nobody was supposed to be there. She looked over her shoulder before she spoke again. "That jet is supposed to fly at the gala Friday night, Arthur Hawthorne's memorial flight." I said nothing, so she kept going. "It isn't just a ceremony. They're announcing the government medical transport contract. Hawthorne Global is supposed to become the company flying emergency transplant teams and critical care patients across the country." Her voice tightened around the words. "If that aircraft fails in front of regulators and investors, the board will say Evelyn can't protect her father's legacy or lead the contract." That changed the shape of the whole thing. Victor wasn't just trying to make me look like a desperate liar. He was setting Evelyn up to fall in public, and he was using me as the dirty fingerprints on the weapon. I hated what Evelyn had done to Sophie. I hated the way she had stood there while my daughter's medicine rolled across the floor and strangers recorded it. But I knew what a trap looked like when it had expensive lighting around it. I had lived inside one long enough to lose my license, my savings, and every clean version of my name. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Nora pressed her tablet against her ribs like it was keeping her upright. "Because Victor requested private access to Arthur's jet 2 nights before it died. 28 minutes. Camera blackout in Bay 7. He called it a maintenance synchronization." She looked down at the concrete. "I should have flagged it." "Why didn't you?" I asked, and I heard the edge in my own voice. Nora gave a tired little breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "People with rent, debt, and sick parents learn silence." For a second I saw Sophie's pill bottles on that hangar floor, and the answer tasted bitter before I said it. Silence is how dangerous men get promoted into clean offices. She took that one without defending herself. Then she opened her tablet case and handed me an old printed maintenance photo, folded small enough to hide in her palm. Arthur Hawthorne's hand was in the frame, rougher than I expected for a billionaire, holding the original emergency key beside the open avionics panel. There was a tiny blue dot marked near the top of the plastic, deliberate, not factory. "I don't know what it means," Nora whispered. I did not know either, not yet. But I drove home with that photo on the passenger seat beside Sophie's crushed paper airplane, knowing the woman who had humiliated my daughter might be walking into the same kind of lie that had buried me years before. The van was gone before Sophie finished tying her shoes. I woke to the sound of chains outside our apartment window, that hard metal scrape that used to mean work for me, and now meant I had become the job. A white repo truck sat at the curb with its yellow lights turning slow against the brick walls. My service van was already hooked at the front, the one with the dented side door and my name fading on the back. That van was not pretty. It smelled like wire insulation, coffee, and rainwater. But it carried my tools, took Sophie to appointments, and kept us one step ahead of the kind of trouble that catches you when your badge gets suspended. Sophie came out onto the apartment stairs in her hoodie, one hand on the railing, watching like she knew if she asked a question, I might not survive answering it. The room went quieter through the speaker. Not silent, but close. I heard Evelyn move away from the phone, then her voice steadying itself in public. "Bring me the ribbon blade." Later, when I saw the footage, she was standing beside the ceremonial table with Arthur's key under one hand and a small silver blade in the other. Victor stood 10 feet away, his face changed in a way no forged document could hide. Evelyn pressed the blade into the seam. The plastic resisted at first, cheap and stubborn, then cracked open. Something tiny dropped onto the white tablecloth, a storage chip, no bigger than Sophie's smallest pill. Nora plugged it into her tablet with both hands shaking. Arthur's voice filled the hangar, whole this time. He named Victor Crane. He named 2 board members. He read dates, access times, and payments tied to the sabotage. Then he said my name. Mason Reed was blacklisted because he exposed the wiring defect, not because he failed. Not because grief made him unsafe, because he told the truth when safer men sold it. The hangar heard the rest, too. Unsafe jets kept in service, families put in the sky for profit. Victor started walking toward the side exit before the message finished, but the same security guards who had searched Sophie's medicine bag stepped into his path and would not move. They brought me back through the hangar doors in handcuffs, and every sound in that room seemed to fold in on itself. An hour earlier, those same people had watched me get marched out like a threat. Now they stood around Arthur Hawthorne's jet with their champagne glasses lowered and their mouths shut. Evelyn had demanded the police bring me back. I heard her voice before I saw her. "The man you arrested is the only one who can finish what my father started." The officer beside me checked something on his radio, then spoke with a supervisor near the stage. Evidence changes people's posture. Suddenly, nobody wanted to stand too close to the lie. Evelyn walked toward me herself. She did not send Nora. She did not ask the officer to do it. After the police confirmed Arthur's chip and the access records, she took the cuff key and unlocked my wrists with her own hands. The metal came loose, and for a second she held the cuffs like she finally understood they were not just police equipment. They were what her doubt had allowed. "Mason," she said, but I did not let her finish. Not yet. I rubbed my wrists once and walked past Victor Crane without looking at him. That was not mercy. That was discipline. If I looked too long, I might spend my last clean minute on the wrong man. I climbed the service stairs into Arthur's jet with the whole hangar watching. The cockpit still smelled like cold leather and old electricity. I placed Arthur's cut-open key beside the panel, restored the emergency sequence, and worked through the reset with my hands doing what my name had been punished for knowing. Blue light returned to the screens. The auxiliary system hummed. Then Arthur Hawthorne's full message came through the hangar speakers. He spoke about the wiring defect. He spoke about the men who buried reports and called cowardice procedure. Then his voice softened at the end. "Evelyn, never build my company on men who fear honest hands." Evelyn cried where everyone could see it. Not because the jet powered on, because her father's last lesson had reached her through the man she had let them shame. Reporters rushed forward. Board members scattered into phone calls. Victor stood trapped beside the security guards, exposed in front of the aviation world. Cameras turned to me, waiting for blood. I could have given them Victor piece by piece. Instead, I said, "Open the wiring files, all of them." Evelyn asked me what I wanted with Arthur's jet still humming behind us and every camera in that hangar pointed at my face. You could feel the room waiting for a number. Reporters leaned in, board members froze halfway through private phone calls. Victor Crane stood near security with his jaw locked, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked like a man who could not polish his way out. I thought about my van being chained in front of Sophie. I thought about her treatment slot being handed away because I could not confirm money fast enough. I thought about the suit hanging in my closet, the one from my wife's funeral, and how close I had come to wearing it into that room just so people would believe I owned something clean. Mostly, I thought about Sophie pulling her hospital bracelet under her sleeve while grown people laughed. So when I spoke, I did not name a price. I said, "Reopen the old wiring case. Ground every aircraft tied to that defect until it is inspected by someone outside this company. Notify every affected family. Clear every worker who was silenced. Put their names back where Victor took them from." The board moved all at once, like I had dropped a match in gasoline. One man said liability, another said market reaction. Evelyn looked at them, then at Arthur's opened key on the table, and she walked straight to Nora. "Write it," she said. "Now." Nora pulled up the order on her tablet with hands that shook, and Evelyn signed it on camera before anyone in a tailored suit could stop her. Victor tried then. Of course he did. He said he had followed board direction, that decisions were made above him, that he was being used as a convenient villain. Nora did not argue. She just released the full access logs, the payment trails, the private messages tying him directly to the cover-up. His words got smaller after that. Evelyn turned back to me and offered payment, and I accepted it because honest work should not have to starve to prove it is honest. But I made her put it in writing. Diagnostic work, business damage, lost contracts. Not hush money, not pity money, not revenge money. There is a difference, and I needed Sophie to grow up knowing it. When reporters pushed microphones toward me and asked if Evelyn deserved to lose everything, I looked at her standing beside her father's jet with tears still drying on her face. I said, "The truth is heavy enough. I don't need to add cruelty to it." That was the part nobody expected from the dangerous man in the old work jacket. They had called me a threat to aviation, a scammer with a sick kid, a broken widower who could not be trusted near flight-critical systems. But when the room finally needed someone to protect strangers in the sky, the poor man they searched was the only one still asking about the families. Evelyn did not pay for Sophie's treatment the way she had tried before, quiet and hidden, like money slipped under a door to make guilt go away. She did it in public, with her name on it and the cameras off. Hawthorne Global created an emergency medical grant for children trapped in insurance delays, families told to wait while a child's body kept asking for help right now. Sophie was the first patient covered under it, not because Evelyn bought my silence, but because she finally understood that help given in secret can become control. I signed no hush clause. There was no apology buried in legal language. Just treatment for my daughter, and after that, treatment for other kids whose parents had been doing the same kitchen table math. The morning Sophie went in, I sat beside her bed holding the paper cup of ice chips she kept forgetting she was not supposed to chew yet. She looked small under those blankets, all wires and soft beeping, with one taped paper airplane on the wall where the nurses let her put it. When the procedure was over and she finally woke up, the first thing she did was blink at me and whisper, "Water." Not the jet, not the gala, not Victor, just water. I lifted the straw to her mouth, watched her take 2 tiny sips, and listened to her breathe without fighting every breath. That sound did more to me than any engine ever had. All the billionaires, cameras, and expensive men faded behind the ordinary sound of my child waking up and being here. Evelyn came 2 days later without photographers, without anyone to witness how decent she was trying to be. She stood in the doorway until Sophie noticed her. Then she walked to the bed and spoke to my daughter first. "I should never have let grown people make your father small," she said. Sophie studied her for a long second, the way children do when they are deciding whether an adult means something. Then she reached beside her pillow and held out the paper airplane from the hangar. I had taped the crushed nose back together, but the boot mark was still there across the wing. "Planes still fly if somebody fixes the fold," Sophie said. Evelyn took it with both hands, and for once she had no CEO answer ready. Victor Crane and the board members faced investigations, hearings, lawsuits, all the loud machinery that comes when powerful people finally lose the privilege of quiet consequences. I did not celebrate it. I checked the recall list instead. I checked the aircraft tail numbers. I checked that families had been notified, and that workers called unstable had their names cleared. My airport badge was restored. My certification came back too, with an official letter that used clean language for a dirty thing. I could have returned to the same world that buried me, but I had no appetite for begging a polished office to trust the hands it had once tied. So I opened a small independent avionics shop near a county airport where the coffee is bad and the work is honest. Evelyn changed slowly, which is the only kind of change I trust. She grounded planes when it cost money. She answered questions without hiding behind lawyers. Sometimes she showed up at the shop with no cameras and asked what the manuals did not say. On opening day, Sophie pinned her repaired paper airplane to the wall beside Arthur Hawthorne's cut-open $2 key. That key had carried the truth every expensive person in that hangar missed. Every morning when I unlock the shop, I look at it and remember that the smallest things are only small until somebody honest finally sees them. The repo driver was decent, which made the whole thing harder. He kept saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. Reed," while he handed me forms that did not care whether he was sorry. Losing my airport badge had frozen my contracts. The canceled contracts had triggered missed payments, and missed payments had turned my van into collateral with wheels. My hand shook so badly signing the release that the pen scratched through the paper. The driver looked away. Sophie walked down 3 steps, opened my tool bag where it sat beside the door, and placed her crushed paper airplane inside it. The same one from the hangar, the one with the boot mark across Evelyn Hawthorne's jet flying over a hospital. "Maybe keep this with the important stuff," she said. I nodded because I could not trust my voice. Then the chains tightened, and the van rolled away with half my life inside it. By noon, Hawthorne's legal team sent a cease and desist accusing me of defamation for asking about the full footage. They used words like malicious, damaging, and false. Not one word about my daughter's medicine on the hangar floor. An hour later, my landlord left a voicemail. He said he hated to bring it up, but rent was late, and with the fraud allegations online, he needed to know whether there was something real behind all this. I stood in our kitchen listening to his voice while Sophie lined up her pill bottles by size on the counter, smallest to tallest, like order was something she could still make. I had no van, no badge, no income that could move fast, and no clean name to borrow against. At the hospital that afternoon, the woman at the desk folded her hands before she told me. Sophie's treatment slot had been reassigned because payment confirmation had not arrived. Another child was waiting, she said. Another family ready to move forward. Sophie sat beside me, feet swinging above the floor, and gave the woman a small smile. "That's okay," she said. "They probably needed it more." I looked at my little girl comforting the room that had closed its door on her. And for the first time since the hangar, I almost let Victor win. Evelyn Hawthorne came after dark, alone, but she still looked like money had walked up our cracked sidewalk and gotten lost. I saw her from the kitchen window first, standing beside a black car with no driver visible, her coat pulled tight against the wind, her heels placed carefully where the concrete had split. Sophie's paper airplane was taped to the inside of that same window, the crushed one from the hangar, smoothed flat as much as I could manage. The boot mark still ran across the little drawing of Evelyn's jet flying over a hospital. Evelyn looked at it before she looked at me. When I opened the door, she did not say she was sorry. She did not ask about Sophie. She said, "Why do you think my father's jet was sabotaged?" Just like that. Straight to the machine, because machines were easier than children and shame. I stepped outside and pulled the door mostly closed behind me so Sophie would not hear every word. "First truth," I said. "You let your security team search a sick child's medicine bag in front of strangers." Evelyn's face tightened, but she did not look away. "I came for facts, Mr. Reed." "That is a fact," I said. Her inhalers hit the floor. Her pills rolled under a service cart. People recorded it like she was evidence. You stood there and let it happen because my being right made you feel small. Her mouth opened, then stopped. Through the window, Sophie moved past with a blanket around her shoulders, and Evelyn's eyes went to the paper airplane again. For 1 second, all that polish on her face cracked just enough for silence to get through. Then she forced it back. "Show me what you found." I took Arthur Hawthorne's old photo from my back pocket and held it under the porch light. "This is your father's jet before he died. The emergency maintenance key is clipped inside the avionics panel, blue dot on the plastic, same panel I opened yesterday." She touched the edge of the picture like it might cut her. "That key was missing when your people failed to start it," I said. "But that was too easy. A visible lockout, something cheap and embarrassing for everybody to miss. I think it was planted so everyone would focus on the $2 key and not whatever deeper sabotage it was hiding." Evelyn stared at the photo a long time before she said, "That was the last aircraft my father flew." Her voice changed on father, barely, but enough. He was sick by then. He knew it. The memorial flight was private before it was public. I promised him I would take that jet up once more under his name. I looked back at our window, at Sophie's airplane with the boot mark across it.
Rich people always think promises are private, I said, until poor people end up bleeding for them.
Evelyn reached into her coat and pulled out a folded check. For Sophie's treatment, she said. No conditions. I looked at that paper and hated how badly I wanted to take it. I could see the hospital desk, the reassigned slot, Sophie saying another kid probably needed it more. But the full video was still hidden, my badge was still suspended, and my daughter was still the sick kid from a scam caption. Money before truth is just a receipt for silence, I said. Her eyes hardened. You would refuse help for your child because of pride? I stepped closer. Pride is what men like Victor couldn't steal from me. She turned away angry, but at her car door she took out her phone. Nora, she said, cold and clear, release the full hangar footage. All of it. The full footage came out the next morning, and for about 10 minutes I thought maybe the truth had finally found its legs. It showed everything the first clip had cut away. It showed me opening the avionics panel with that little $2 key. It showed the cockpit screens waking up. It showed 10 elite technicians standing there with nothing to say. And then it showed what came after. Security searching my tool bag, Sophie's medicine on the floor, her paper airplanes scattered under polished shoes, while Evelyn Hawthorne stood there letting it happen. People started sharing it with new captions. Some called me a good father. Some called Evelyn cruel. Some said a billionaire finally got humbled by the man she tried to throw away. But the internet never gives a working man a clean rescue. By lunch, half the comments said I had staged the whole thing perfectly, that I knew how to look wounded, that Sophie's hospital bracelet was the best prop in the room. Then Victor Crane did what men like him do when truth gets too close. He leaked my old Atlas Aerosystems file. Not the real story, of course. The version they had built after my wife died, full of clean, official words arranged like a loaded gun. Unstable, reckless, grief-impaired, emotionally unreliable around flight-critical systems. There was a note about me breaking down during a maintenance review, like crying in a bathroom 3 weeks after burying your wife proved you could not tell the truth about wiring. I was at the hospital with Sophie when the article hit. A nurse had left her tablet on the counter, and Sophie saw my name before I could turn it away. She read slowly, her finger under the words, then looked up at me from that paper gown and asked, "Is Mom dying why people think you lie?" I sat down beside her because my legs were done pretending. I wanted to give her a soft answer, something small enough for an 8-year-old to hold. But soft lies had already cost us too much. So I brushed a crease out of her blanket and said, "Some people use your worst day as a weapon when they don't have anything honest to use." She nodded once, quiet, and went back to folding the edge of her hospital band. Across town, Evelyn's board was panicking. The scandal was hitting the gala, the medical transport contract, the investors, all those clean people who only cared about truth once it threatened stock value. That afternoon, Victor stood outside Hawthorne's private terminal with cameras in his face and challenged me to prove the jet was sabotaged live at the gala or disappear from aviation forever. I watched the clip twice. The second time, Sophie reached over and squeezed my sleeve. I accepted because if I didn't, Victor's lie would stop being a lie. It would become history. I spent most of that night with Arthur Hawthorne's maintenance photo spread across my kitchen table, Sophie asleep in the next room with her hospital bracelet still loose around her wrist. The tiny blue dot on that $2 key kept bothering me. It was too deliberate to be a mark from use, too clean to be factory, and old mechanics don't mark cheap plastic unless the mark means something. I pulled out 3 old avionics manuals from a box under the sink, the ones I had kept even after Atlas made sure nobody would hire me for that work again. Around 2 in the morning, I found it. Not in the main startup system, not in the flight computer. In an old emergency recorder pathway tied to the maintenance override. Arthur had customized the jet so voice notes could be stored through that little key sequence, separate from anything a normal diagnostic scan would touch. That was why Victor had removed the key. Not just to stop the jet, to block whatever Arthur had left behind before he died. Evelyn let me back into the jet the next afternoon, but she made it clear trust had not suddenly become easy. 2 security guards stood behind me, one near the cabin door and one by the service stairs. Nora watched from the hangar floor with her tablet pressed to her chest. Victor stood in the doorway, arms crossed, trying to look bored. He wasn't smiling anymore, though. That told me more than the guards did. Before I stepped onto the aircraft, I turned to Evelyn and said, "One condition. Sophie's name, face, illness, none of it goes into any public statement from your company. Not to make you look sorry, not to make me look credible. She is done being used in grown people's fights." Evelyn looked at me for a long second, then nodded. Agreed. It was not an apology, but it was the first thing she had given me that did not sound like money. I sat in the cockpit with the old spare key in my hand and Arthur's photo balanced on my knee. The jet smelled clean, too clean, like nobody had lived inside it since he died. I opened the emergency panel, matched the blue dot sequence from the photo, and turned the key halfway while holding the recorder bypass. The screens flickered once. A soft crackle came through the cockpit speakers. Then Arthur Hawthorne's voice filled the cabin, thin with age, but steady enough to make Evelyn grip the back of the pilot's seat. "Evie," he said, and the Billionaire CEO behind me stopped being a CEO for one breath. She was just a daughter, hearing her father say her childhood name. "If this message found you, then I was right to be afraid. Do not trust the men who smile while standing between you and the truth. They will call it protection. They will call it loyalty. But what they are protecting is what they stole." Victor shifted in the doorway. I kept my hand on the key. Arthur's voice continued, lower now. "Start with..." The speakers cut out, not faded, not glitched. Cut. The screen went black, then reset clean like nothing had happened. I looked at the dead display, then at Victor's hand slipping his phone into his pocket. Part of the emergency recorder had been wiped remotely, which meant the sabotage was not history. It was still happening right in front of us. The gala looked nothing like a trap at first. It looked like wealth congratulating itself under perfect lighting. Arthur Hawthorne's jet sat in the center of Hangar 7 with spotlights across its silver body, polished so clean it reflected the champagne glasses moving around it. Investors stood near the wing. Donors smiled for photos. Reporters checked their microphones. And aviation regulators watched from the front row with folded programs in their laps. Victor had already been busy. I could feel his story in the room before anyone said it to my face. Mason Reed, desperate ground mechanic, sick daughter, grieving CEO, a man using pity to crawl back into aviation after being thrown out for good reason. Evelyn's board members had her boxed in near the stage. I saw one of them lean close and say something that made her jaw tighten. They wanted her to denounce me before I could speak. They wanted me turned into the problem in front of everyone, clean and final. I walked in wearing my old work jacket because my only suit was still hanging in the back of my closet in a plastic funeral bag, the one I wore when I buried Sophie's mother. I could not put that suit on for Victor Crane. People noticed the jacket right away. They always notice the thing that lets them place you. A woman near the bar whispered, "That's him." And a man beside her said, "Where's the hospital prop?" My hand went to my phone. I almost turned around right there. Then Sophie's video came through. She was sitting in her hospital bed, blanket up to her chest, hair messy, paper airplane taped to the rail beside her. "Start it, Dad," she said. Then she looked straight at the camera and added, "But don't become like them." I stood in that expensive room with my daughter's voice in my ear. and I kept walking. Evelyn stepped onto the stage before Victor could introduce his version of me. Her hands were steady, but her face was not. "I humiliated an honest man," she said into the microphone, "because arrogance felt safer than shame. I allowed his daughter to be treated like evidence. That was not leadership." The room shifted. For the first time, Victor's smile lost its place. Then he walked forward, holding a folder, and said, "Miss Hawthorne is being manipulated." The screen behind him lit up with forged access logs showing my name inside the hangar before the first service call. Victor did not raise his voice. He did not have to. Men like him understand that paper looks more truthful when it is held calmly. He stood beside Arthur Hawthorne's jet and pointed to the screen, where fake badge records showed my name entering Hangar 7 2 nights before the service call. Then came the blurry footage. A man in my old work jacket near the aircraft stairs, head down, face turned just enough away from the camera to make doubt useful. I looked at Evelyn. I wish I had not. For half a second she hesitated, not long enough for the room to catch it maybe, but long enough for me. After everything she had heard from Arthur's own voice, after what happened to Sophie, after what she had admitted on that stage, doubt still crossed her face before the police stepped toward me. The cuffs did not hurt as much as that look. 2 officers took my arms and walked me through the gala while donors lifted their phones like they were catching a show worth saving. Nobody stepped in front of them. Nobody said, "Wait." The same people who had just heard Evelyn call me honest now watched me get pulled past the champagne tables like honesty had expired. I saw Victor by the jet, his folder tucked under one arm, smiling that small, clean smile I had known for years. The smile that meant he had not just beaten me, he had arranged the room so everyone else would help. Later, a nurse told me Sophie saw the live stream from her hospital bed. She did not cry. She just took the crushed paper airplane from the rail, the one I had taped back together after the hangar, and slowly peeled the tape off the nose like she had stopped believing broken things could hold. Nora followed us out into the cold service drive, walking fast in heels that were not made for running. Just before the officer put me in the back of the police car, she pressed a small envelope into my cuffed hands. "Arthur kept it separate," she whispered. "I should have given it to you sooner." The door shut before I could answer. Inside the envelope was the original $2 emergency key, the one from Arthur's photo, with the tiny blue dot still marked on the plastic. Folded around it was a note in old handwriting. "This opens what they won't inspect." I stared at that cheap key until the whole trick turned in my mind. Victor had wiped the recorder because he knew we would look inside the jet, but Arthur had hidden the real proof inside the one thing every expensive technician had treated like nothing. When the officer asked who I wanted for my call, I did not say lawyer. I said, "Evelyn Hawthorne." Evelyn answered like someone had taken the floor out from under her. I could hear the gala behind her, voices stacked on voices, board members trying to pull the night back into their hands. "Mason?" she said. I looked down at the $2 key in my cuffed palms. That cheap, blue dot plastic thing Arthur Hawthorne had trusted more than his own executives. "Cut it open," I said. "On stage. Right now." She went quiet. "What?" "The key," I said. "Arthur's original emergency key. Cut it open where everyone can see." It sounded crazy even to me, a handcuffed mechanic in the back of a police car telling a billionaire CEO to slice open a piece of plastic in front of regulators and cameras. Behind her, I heard a man say, "End the call, Evelyn." Another voice said, "This is absurd." Evelyn's breath shook once. "Mason, the board is telling me." "Your father separated that key from every official record for a reason," Nora said suddenly, loud enough that the phone caught it. "Miss Hawthorne, do it."